Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. We would like this scenic boat cruise to be an opportunity for you all to consider deeply your life in terms of what is the value of your life right now and what is the yield to be obtained, the gain to be obtained as you put your plans into action for the future. Here we are, just poised in the middle of the bay here. You don't have to worry about where you're going. You can suspend yourself in a reflective mood. So much of our activity is bound up with end gaining. You have to have an end in mind. Some profit, some acquisition, some achievement. But here, floating in the middle of the water here, you can suspend all that extreme proactivism and just focus on what you'd like of your life, what your life could actually become. Sometimes we need to step off the treadmill and consider deeply where we're coming from, where we're going. We can look out and see small waves surrounding us. Our life is also amidst so many waves. It is not simply that this boat is surrounded by waves, but our life is surrounded by waves, and our life is rocked by various waves. Now, how would you analyze those waves that are affecting your life? You might consider that the waves are in the form of success or failure, promotion, or been made redundant, visas, PR, or these kind of things you would consider waves. Marriage, buying a home. But the ancient yoga texts of India give us a much deeper and more efficient way to understand the waves that are impacting on us. Let's take our vision away from such externals as income, mortgages, car payments, debt payments, investments, savings, profits. Let's focus on happiness and distress, because this is what life in the material world is actually all about. Some things we fear in life because they bring us distress. Other things we welcome because we think they'll bring us happiness. So what I'd like you to consider is that the real inputs into your life, or those waves that are impacting upon you, are not so much things like financial gain, financial loss, or consumer acquisitions or consumer losses. The things that are really impacting upon you, the waves that we should be focused on, are happiness and distress. We're hoping in our life, as it marches forward, that certain things will bring us happiness. In other words, we don't really want the things in of themselves. We want happiness. And we're not repulsed by certain things in of themselves. We are repulsed by the distress, the unhappiness that those things bring us. So basically, the ancient Vedic texts like Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam teach us that we're trying to ride the waves of happiness and distress. When you talk about riding the waves of life, you're meaning, from the material point of view, riding the waves of happiness and distress. You're hoping that the number of happy waves that come to you will surpass the number of distress waves. And then you're known as a successful wave surfer. So you can just see yourself. I know, I'm sure, well, there may be one or two here who know how to surf. But you can just see yourself on a surfboard, even on these small waves. And you're hoping for a happy wave. And you want to avoid the waves that don't bring happiness. And certainly you want to avoid the waves that are distressful. The more happy waves you get, the more you feel your life is successful. So the question that Krishna raises in Bhagavad Gita is, do we really know what happiness is? Are we so sure? Whether you're in your 20s or you're in your 40s, 50s, some of you may be in your 60s. Do you actually know what happiness is? It can be an embarrassing question because we want to present ourselves to others that I know what happiness is. Just give me a few things that I know I need. I'll be happy, believe me, without a doubt. But recent research in the science of happiness has shown that people actually don't know what will make them happy. The science of happiness is about 15 years old in its global acceptance. And it shows that people constantly make mistakes, major errors in terms of predicting what will make them happy. There's an inbuilt miscalculation in the mind. When you look ahead into the future and you project, if I get this, if I get that, I know how I'm going to feel. When I get that promotion, when I get that higher income, when I get social prestige and social respect, when I fly back to India and I tell everyone there, all my friends and relatives, how I'm climbing the corporate ladder, I just know how I'll feel when they look at me with envious eyes. So we project into the future how we think we're going to feel. So scientists, behavioral scientists, point out that we constantly mistake our happiness predictions. We have a tendency, a human inbuilt tendency, to overshoot the mark. If we get what we actually want, which is not often, we're never satisfied the way we thought we would be. Try to think about it here in the middle of the water. Maybe you've already started to think in this way. You struggle. You work so hard to try and get what you want. Rarely do you get it. And when you do, there's an initial burst of enthusiasm. I got it, I got it. I have attained. I have acquired. It's mine. You know that feeling? It's mine. Whether it's a consumer item or another person, that feeling that you possess, it's for me. It's for my pleasure, my enjoyment. So even if that does happen to you and you do acquire, you do gain, there's always a letdown after that. How do you cope with that letdown? Maybe you try to ignore it. All right. My enthusiasm faded. There's a big letdown, but I'll keep going. I won't give up. What makes you keep going? It's social pressure. You have to hold your place in the race. Otherwise you feel people won't respect you. People will think you're a failure, a loser. As they say here in Australia, people will think you're a daydreaming no-hoper. You don't want that. You like that everyone thinks that you are dynamic, you are progressive, you can make your way through this world with expertise. That's the reputation that we want for ourselves. So it's very difficult for most people to admit that they are experiencing letdown after letdown. And society encourages you to be determined even though we don't know what we're doing. Just be determined. Push ahead. Why? Just push ahead. Do something with your life. Well, what should I do? Don't worry, just do something. You can't just stand still. You have to acquire, you have to attain, you have to connect. Then when we consider the spiritual options, we think, isn't that laziness? To be spiritual means you don't do anything. You just vibrate mantras, you read a few holy books. Well, what about your life? We have this misconception in our mind that what Krishna is talking about in Bhagavad Gita is some kind of idle life of a parasite. The spiritual persons are simply living off the efforts of those who are industrious. So we have this fear that if I take Krishna's instructions too seriously, I'll become filled with inertia. I'll become lazy. I'll lose my drive. And that drive to get ahead has been so deeply implanted in us by society. You have to constantly move forward. Otherwise, you'll be lost. If you lose your place in the race, your life is finished. You have to keep moving ahead. It's very rare that we get a time or place to just sit down and reconsider. Who am I and what should I be doing? Why am I so determined? Now, there's nothing wrong with being determined. The spiritual life requires intelligent determination. But the question is, why am I being so determined about chasing the material illusion? What is really in it for me? Let us say I successfully surfed the waves of happiness and distress. Is that the ultimate goal of life? Will I really be fulfilled? The ancient Vedic text, Srimad Bhagavatam, explains that happiness and distress both are material phenomena brought to you by time. So, in other words, time is not just something that goes tick, tick, tick on your watch. Time is bringing you things. It's bringing you your karmic reactions from previous lives. So as time, so to speak, moves along, it presents to you, it brings to you various waves of happiness and distress. These waves of happiness and distress are actually external to you. They're not the real you. They're not what you are about. How could that be? Krishna explains in Bhagavad Gita that you are a spiritual being, distinct from the waves of happiness and distress. In other words, even material happiness is not you. That's why you're never completely fulfilled by material happy experiences. They fade very quickly in their value. You don't feel touched at the core of your being. That's not possible because you are not material. So what Krishna is explaining to us in Bhagavad Gita is how to rise above both material distress and material happiness. There is a higher level of life above those waves of happiness and distress. But as long as we are absorbed in the material concept of life, we never get out of the grip of happiness and distress. We just go from one to the other. And in this way, our whole life is spent. We don't go to a higher level. So let us consider our fears of taking Bhagavad Gita seriously, taking Bhakti Yoga seriously. Our fears are based on thinking, number one, I don't have time. I'm so busy. And number two, I'll lose my competitive edge if I become too spiritual. And number three, my reputation. How will I explain to my family and friends that I'm not a complete materialist anymore? You can talk to so many devotees of Krishna, and you'll find that these fears are unjustified. We do have time for our self-realization, for our enlightenment. It's just that we're wasting so much time. As far as our endeavors at the university, at the workplace, the Krishna conscious practitioner becomes most expert in handling the challenges of life. You see, by dealing with the main challenge, which is your spiritual development, automatically the shadow challenges are taken care of. The material is the shadow of the spiritual. So if you become expert in the spiritual, you're easily expert in the material. Just like if you know how to handle light, you know how to handle shadows. So in the Vedic text, the material energy is referred to as the shadow energy of Krishna. Shadow follows the light. Let's talk about balance. By following Lord Krishna's instructions, we can handle both the material and spiritual affairs of our life, because both the material and spiritual energies come from Krishna. So that means if we connect to Krishna, we are expert in all the energies that come from Krishna. In Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, Aham sarvasya prabhavo matta sarvam bhavartate. Krishna says that he is the origin of everything material and spiritual. Everything emanates from him. So because the devotee of Krishna knows how to connect with Krishna, the devotee is expert in all of Krishna's emanations. So it's amazing that we have this fear, an unnecessary fear, that if I take up Lord Krishna's instructions, I'll lose my expertise in the material world, or I'll never get that material expertise that I'm due. This is an unnecessary paranoia. Let us consider what we want from our life. What is it that we are determined to get? What are we dreaming to get for ourselves? Suppose someone came up to you and asked you, what is your dream? What do you want? What would you say? And are you sure that the answer you would give would actually satisfy you throughout your life? Can you be sure of that? No. No material experience will satisfy the pure spirit soul. This is Krishna's message in Bhagavad Gita. We are Krishna's spiritual parts. Only connection to the complete spiritual whole will satisfy us. We are dreaming our material existence. You've ever been in the same room at night with someone who's dreaming? You can see that sleeping person is lost in a dream world. They're responding as if what they are dreaming is for real. You can watch them toss and turn, and as if they're undergoing a real experience. And you can see they're just dreaming. If the dream experience seems to be too bad in that person, you wake the person up. Wake up, you're having a nightmare. Material existence is like a dream. We're hallucinating. We've forgotten our spiritual identity. We've forgotten the supreme spiritual identity. And in this way, we waste our life pursuing so many temporary goals, which haven't made anyone happy. So we are speaking from the treasury of ancient spiritual knowledge of India. This is India's great contribution to the world. There's no need for the country with the greatest treasure house of spiritual knowledge to imitate material goals that have caused other countries in the world so much trouble. In Srimad Bhagavatam, the graduate study to Bhagavad Gita, this kind of imitation is called, in Sanskrit, punascharvata charvananam. Chewing that which has already been chewed. If someone takes some food, puts it in their mouth and chews it, doctors recommend that to digest your food, you chew it at least 30 times, each mouthful. I don't know many persons who do that, but that's what the doctors recommend. 30 times you chew a mouthful before you swallow. Now, let us say you do that. Before you swallow, after chewing 30 times, you take what's in your mouth and you give it to someone else to chew. None of you would do that. I know sometimes husband and wife or lovers, they eat off the same plate, or they give what one has chewed to the other to chew. But 30 times? So this is what Srimad Bhagavatam describes as the process of material enjoyment. You're taking what has already been chewed so much and there's no juice there, and you're passing it to someone else. Please, this is my love, this is my care. Please take it and you also chew. So we don't want India to be known for trying to chew what has already been chewed so many times by so many other countries. The people are not satisfied in those countries. What India has to offer is unique, the greatest treasury of spiritual knowledge. Knowledge of how to have a balanced life in which your spiritual and material needs are met without extremism in terms of material endeavor. When we look at the social research done in our current times, we find that there's so much statistical evidence that beyond a certain basic middle class level of income, any further increase in your income or luxury will not lead to an increase in happiness. Furthermore, such a further increase will not lead to increased longevity of your life. So then you might say, well, why am I working so hard? Often the answer will be, I'm not doing it for myself, I'm doing it for the children. If I don't have children now, I'll have children in the future, so I'm working and slaving for them. Well, what happens is that such persons, when there are children, they have no time to spend for the children. They're so habituated to pursuing an illusion, struggling with determination. We become habituated to racing, habituated to endless striving. We can't get off the treadmill. I'm sure you've seen persons like that. They just can't stop. You try to tell them, look, isn't enough enough? And they always move the goalposts further down the field. Well, I have to get this, and then I'll retire. And then when they get to that level, no, I just need a little bit more, then I'll give up. The goalposts keep moving further and further away. Because they're attached to this passionate endeavor which is making them miserable. What Krishna is presenting in Bhagavad Gita is the motivation for us to restore our social capital. Social capital means the relationships, the genuine relationships we have with others, and especially the genuine relationship we have with the Supreme. Material acquisition won't satisfy you. Even materialists know that, but they can't stop. Just think about that. How tragic it is. I can't stop. Even I might be scientific and understand that increased wealth and opulence won't make me happy. I just can't stop though. There's so much social pressure on me. There are two factors that are making it so difficult for us to change. Number one is called habitual patterns of consumption. We have a certain level of consumerism that we are habituated to. It's our personal tradition. And we just think it's natural. So whether we're big spenders or modest spenders, we have habits of consumerism. And we think that those habits are okay. They're normal for us. It's very difficult to break out of those habits and make our life simpler so we have more time for pursuing the real wealth of spiritual life. So that's one thing, habitual patterns of consumption. The second thing is social comparison. You look around and you see, what do the others have? How can I cut back when the others are getting more? And again, you put the blame on the children. It's not that I want for myself, but how will my children feel knowing that they have friends whose fathers have more money than my kids' fathers? So we always try to offload the blame. It's not for me, it's not for me. It's for others that I'm doing like this. We fear being known as unproductive. So this social comparison pressure is so great. What will my relatives think of me? How can I appear to be slipping back? It's the greatest danger, to be falling back. What Krishna proposes in Bhagavad Gita is that we reshape our life based on spiritual perspectives. In this way, we can pursue a happiness that is beyond the temporary waves of happiness and distress. This is India's greatest contribution to the world. Not that you chew what has already been chewed, but you lead the way, blaze the trail for the greatest lifestyles. Sometimes when I'm speaking here in Australia to persons who have been in Australia for some decades, whether they are from Delhi or Mumbai or Bangalore, sometimes they tell me, Swami, we understand what you're saying, but you know, this is the material age, so we have to be material. These are the material times we're living in. We have to fit into those material times by being material. But how is the fit feeling? It's not a good fit. We have to turn off our brains in order to so-called fit in. And by doing that so-called fitting in, we forget to ask the question, what am I fitting into? It's like you go to a clothing store to get some clothes, and you know there's the fitting room. And so the salesperson says, just go in the fitting room and put something on. Never mind what it is, just fit with something. I said, no, I want to pick out what I'm going to fit into. It's important because I'm thinking of buying some clothes. I want to make sure the clothes fit, and I'm after a particular kind of clothes. No, just go in the fitting room, make anything fit. So the intelligent person doesn't simply want to fit in. The intelligent person wants to consider, what is it that I'm fitting into? So when we look at the social statistics, we see that fitting in to today's materialistic society is so damaging to your health, to your psychology, to your well-being. In case you haven't noticed, people don't know how to live a healthy life anymore. You can see the statistics for India, that the age in which persons are having heart attacks is falling from in the 50s to in the 40s. Now it's down to the 20s. So much pressure. Young executives in their 20s are having heart attacks. I was in Mumbai a few months ago, and there I was giving a talk like this, and I was informed that the owner of the biggest travel agency in India, Raj Travel, he was in his car, the driver of course, on that bridge. Yes. And he told his driver, pull over to the side. The driver pulled over, and this person got out of the car and jumped over the edge of the bridge, finished himself. Now you would probably say, well, if I had his money, I would never have done that. I know what to do with it. Right? Are you so sure? Are we aware of all the pressures that destroy our fragile human spirit? So what Krishna is presenting in Bhagavad Gita is that we reinvest in the highest social capital. We shouldn't neglect the social capital of our life. Social capital doesn't simply mean family and immediate friends. It means how we can be healthy members of a healthy society in relation to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna. What Krishna is presenting in Bhagavad Gita is not that we become inactive, give up our jobs, give up our families, give up our homes. Of course not. Who is Krishna speaking to? Whom is Krishna speaking to in Bhagavad Gita? He's speaking to Arjuna, who's a family man and a military man. And Krishna is speaking Bhagavad Gita on a battlefield in between two armies, the most practical and demanding, pragmatic situation. Krishna is doing that because he knows in the future we'll make excuses. That Krishna is speaking for spiritual people. He's not speaking to those who have to struggle with the real world. So just to cancel out that objection, Krishna spoke to Arjuna, who's externally not a sadhu. He's a family man. He's a military man. Krishna spoke Bhagavad Gita to him. And by Krishna's aiming his instructions at Arjuna, he has given instruction to everyone in all times and all places. So Bhagavad Gita is not some ancient book that's only good for people long, long ago. It's good for everyone in all times and all places. Because Bhagavad Gita is aiming beyond the temporary cultural waves of happiness and distress, which are external to us. The first lesson in Bhagavad Gita given by Krishna is that we are not the body. We are spiritual entities, part of the supreme spiritual entity. So Bhagavad Gita is explaining to us how, within our everyday practical life, we can be the topmost yogis. We can be spiritual while executing our necessary duties in the material world. Anyone who follows Krishna's instructions properly will automatically cease from a lifestyle of extreme acquisition and will focus on their own internal development and the development of their social relationships. Scientific research has shown that the most satisfying aspects of human life are personal development and community relationships. Now just see how one's lifestyle may be destroying those possibilities. Just look at your life and see how much opportunity there is for personal development and community relations. Those are the two things that actually give human beings their greatest satisfaction. Instead, however, we're pursuing higher and higher incomes, higher and higher promotions, higher and higher levels of consumerism. And scientifically, it has been shown these things not only will not make you fulfilled, but they'll destroy you. These scientific facts are known, but still, people can't give up the rat race. The rat race is so addictive. So sometimes we need to admit, I've become addicted to acquisition, achieving, striving, in such an extreme way that there's no point to it all. It's not going to give me the fulfillment I want. It's just that I don't know anything else. I don't know any other way to behave. That is tragic. So what we are doing in the Melbourne Krishna community is indeed building community. Building individuals of personal integrity, personal depth. And we are strengthening the human bonds that form human community. Because those are the things that will satisfy you. We're not speaking of just the relationships in our immediate families or among our immediate friends. Human beings need more than that. Many of you who are studying or working in Australia and have families back in India, you know you need more than just the immediate family. Because in many cases, for you, the immediate family is not there. Your old friends from childhood, where are they? They're not around you. But even if they were, even if your immediate family were there with you, or your childhood friends were there with you, still the human being, known as a social animal, needs a bigger web of relationships. So please consider the social capital of the Krishna devotee network. It is a culture, a bhakti culture of internal personal development and the development of community relationships on a wide scale. Because we are all part and parcel of Krishna. In Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, Sarva yonishu kauntaya murtaya sambhavantaya. Krishna says, all species of life, not simply human beings, but all the species of life have me as their seed-giving father. So the devotee of Krishna learns how to be friendly to all living entities. How to have the deepest and widest social relationships. So this is how your taking up Krishna's instructions will affect you individually and in terms of your social status. You'll develop the wealth of personal advancement in terms of your personal qualities. And you'll develop your community relations on a wide scale. This will satisfy you. And the ultimate community relationship is with Krishna, the source of all living entities. Bhakti Yoga, Krishna consciousness means how to connect with Krishna in pure love. And in that way, you become dear to all living entities. What we are calling for today is not simply that you bounce from one wave to another, happiness, distress, distress, happiness, mixed distress. This is not the goal of human life. India's greatest gift to the world is how to rise above that being bounced about by happiness and distress. There's a higher way of living. Sometimes in the West, when someone sees a person who's too acquisitive, too competitive, too passionate, they may just, especially here in Australia where people are very direct, they'll tell you, hey, get a life. Get a life. Let us consider how to have the best life. That is the treasure chest of knowledge from India. Why chew what has already been chewed and cause so much discomfort and pain? Developing a $1.3 billion space program will not save the day. So many nations have already had their ambitious space programs. What's it done for the people? The real goal of life is internal development and community development. This is called social capital. So yes, one can work, one can study, but you're always trying to enhance your social capital as the goal of life. And Krishna is the supreme social connection. So remember, it is your personal development and your community relationships that will satisfy you. And also they'll protect you in any sudden downturn, which does happen. If your material circumstances plummet, as can happen in this world, you're hit by a wave, a massive wave of distress. Losing a job, immigration problems, health challenges, family problems. It's your social capital that'll bring you through. Your internal development and your community connections, that will bring you through any bad times. Without that personal development and community connections, you can see what people will do. Here in Australia, they turn to alcohol, they turn to drugs, life full of despair, because they don't have that traditional social capital. Remember, when I say social capital, I'm not speaking just about ordinary relationships. I'm speaking about our internal spiritual development. Our internal spiritual development and our spiritual community connections. In our Melbourne Krishna community, we have persons from all over the world. You can come and see how happy they are together. You can see that Krishna is for everyone. It's not that Krishna is just for the Gujaratis or the Bengalis, the Punjabis. No. So yes, you can easily understand that Krishna is meant for everyone in India. But actually, Krishna is for all living entities. He says this in Bhagavad Gita. In Bhagavad Gita, Krishna never says, you should know I am the seed-giving father only of the Indians. He says all living entities. So the sun may seem to rise first in the east, but the sun is for the whole world. Similarly, Krishna's instructions are for everyone. And the joy of social capital that you see in the Melbourne Krishna community is how people from all over the world are chanting Hare Krishna, serving Krishna, rejoicing in knowledge of Krishna, while they're working, maintaining their families, going to university. You can see persons from every continent. From Siberia, from Africa, from the USA, from Canada, South America. Where else are you going to see such immense social capital in action? And this is what is so enlivening to you. You can see, indeed, that Krishna is for everyone, and that everyone's problems can be solved by approaching Krishna. The world is too big of a place because of globalism, or you can look at it the other way and say the world has become such a small place because of globalism. It's too big, or you could say too small, for narrow tribal consciousness. Especially those of you who are under the age of 35. You understand this tribal consciousness is just primitive. You want to be known as persons who are aware of the whole world and can handle the whole world. So this is why we have the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. The International Society for Krishna Consciousness has gone far beyond the traditional village concept of being a devotee of Krishna and made it multinational. The power in the world today is not in villages, it's in multinational entities. And Krishna is the supreme multinationalist. So please consider what is actually going to satisfy you. It is not material acquisition. It is not something so flickering as social respect and prestige. I was speaking a few months ago at the London School of Economics, and I repeated to them a mantra that made the students chuckle. I said, just see how life is going. You're working very hard to spend money that you don't have on things that you don't need, which won't satisfy you anyway, just to impress persons who you're only going to be around temporarily. This is life? We can do much better as human beings. Let us refocus upon the spiritual priority and not fear that our material necessities will be threatened. Let's be abreast with the cutting edge of social research, which tells us that what most satisfies human beings is not consumerism, it's not profiteering, acquisition. What most satisfies human beings are two things: personal development and community connections, community relationships. So what Krishna is speaking about in Bhagavad Gita takes those two assets, personal development and community connections, to their deepest level, to the spiritual level. Takes them beyond the ways of happiness and distress, to the spiritual level. which is unaffected by the ups and downs of material life. So I ask you to please deeply consider these points as we're suspended here in the middle of the water. Think how you can actually aim your life to go to a higher level. It can be done. I myself consider these points. Our boat tour head, Priya, who made the introduction, he explained that, yes, I was a university student. I had just graduated from Yale University. Every year, Hindustan Times rates the world's universities. And Yale is either number 2, this year number 1. So I was graduating, and there's no question of my looking for a job, because at that time in the USA, you graduate from a place like Yale and you don't look for a job, you sit back and you sift through all the job offers. So those job offers were there with AT&T, General Motors, General Electric. But I began to consider deeply, what can I do that would be most beneficial for myself and the world? So in my case, I decided to be a specialist. You see, every field has to have specialists. It's not that everyone will become a specialist. But I wanted to be a specialist in happiness. For most Krishna conscious devotees, they have their home life, they have their occupation. But I decided that I wanted to focus exclusively on the highest knowledge, the highest happiness. Just like so many persons go to university, but that doesn't mean everyone becomes a university professor. But I wanted to become a professor specializing in these things. So I, at the age of 22, was thinking deeply. What can I do that would be most beneficial for myself and others? I had a reflective moment, just as we are reflecting now. So shortly thereafter, I began reading Bhagavad Gita as it is. And I met my eternal spiritual father, His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. And I listened as he explained the best thing I could do for myself and the world was to take up Krishna's instructions. I was a little doubtful at first. I was thinking, there should be political solutions considered, economic solutions, that's what the world needs. But then my studies of history and economics and political science at Yale had taught me that no economist, no political scientist, no social scientist has ever achieved any lasting solutions in this world. It's never been done, and it will never be done. So I had to be open-minded, I had to be scientific, objective. That what I was thinking wasn't going to work. I knew that, but I had to admit it to myself. A few years before I met Srila Prabhupada, he spoke at MIT. And this is when there were just a few Krishna devotees in the West. Maybe 20 or 30. His mission had just started. So he was speaking at MIT. This was in the USA before the big wave of immigration from India started in the 80s, 1980s. So there were very few Indian students in the USA at that time, 1968. Yet there were some at MIT in the audience when Srila Prabhupada began to speak. So when he finished, he asked, are there any questions? And among the various questions, two young Indian students, they were obviously very proud of themselves. They were attending MIT in 1968. So they felt that they were the cream. So they were challenging. They had no respect for an elderly person, what to speak of respect for a sadhu. Because after all, they were at MIT, they knew everything. So, except who they are, but anyway, they're... So they challenged Srila Prabhupada. Swamiji, please tell us, what will this ancient Indian knowledge do for the world? India doesn't need this. India needs technology. Why are you coming to America and presenting this ancient wisdom which has no practical value? So what did Srila Prabhupada reply? He put them in their place very quickly. I have come here to the USA to give the greatest treasure. You have come to beg. In other words, you've come to beg solutions that have already failed. So we'll end here and we'll ask, perhaps you have some questions. You can ask whatever you're curious about. We'll try to answer. We've covered many topics. Anyone want to take a risk?
Please.
Yes, in the back.
How do we balance material life and spiritual life?
All right. He's asking, the gentleman is asking, how do we balance material life and spiritual life? That is a very intelligent question. In order to balance properly, we need to know what goes on both sides of the scale. We can't have a balance if there's just material. We have to have the spiritual also. So the balance is that we know our number one priority is spiritual development. At the same time, we have to maintain the body, food, shelter, so forth. But we don't let our material requirements dominate our spiritual needs. Someone who has the Krishna conscious vision, by following Krishna's instructions, you'll become expert at handling both the material and spiritual energies because they both come from Krishna. For example, so many of our members, when they first take up the chanting of the Hare Krishna mantra on beads, they have this fear that they'll never have the time to do this. I'm already so busy working or studying, or both working and studying, family life, how will I ever have time to chant the Hare Krishna mantra as an individual practice? But then, as they start to chant a little, they make an amazing discovery. They find that they have more time than they realize they have. It's almost mystical. It's like the chanting of Hare Krishna creates time. What really happens is that the chanting of Hare Krishna cleanses your mind so that you can manage your day more efficiently. Because so much time is wasted in our mind because of all the impurities there. Thoughts, take time. So because the mind is impure, you don't think so quickly. There's too much guk in the mind. But the chanting cleanses the mind as you focus on the spiritual priority of connecting to Krishna, and you can do the events and necessities of your day much more quickly and efficiently. So this is a universal discovery. Because your vision becomes more purified, you can easily see how to sort out your life and arrange and rearrange your life. But when the mind is polluted, it's very difficult to see clearly what your life is and what it's about. The material mind is full of consumer impulses planted in you by the media. Remember, habitual patterns of consumption, social comparison. These things dominate the mind, and you can't get a clear vision of who you are and what you should be about. But by following Krishna's instructions in Bhagavad Gita, you actually can see clearly what should be your material activities, what should be your spiritual activities. Clarity is so precious, and it's what is so missing today. Clarity of vision. Very good question, thank you. Yes. Can bring him the microphone, please.
Chanting Krishna and in the place, shouldn't we be considering we should be thinking of Krishna consciousness or thinking of Krishna? But when we're counting the beds, it seems like all the thoughts come at that point, and we Hare Krishna. We're thinking of maybe of the boat cruise over here, or thinking of a movie or something. When you're
or a cricket match.
Yeah, or a cricket match. Yeah. So will it be considered as a spiritual, what should I say, praying or something, or is it it doesn't have any meaning?
Chanting Hare Krishna at any stage always has meaning. In the beginning, because our minds are impure, our minds are carrying so much debris from countless lifetimes. Therefore, when you start to chant the Hare Krishna mantra, you realize how wild your mind is. You see, we never took the time to clean it, so we had a false sense of peace. But as soon as you start cleaning, you see all the dust flying in the air. Oh, what is going on? It's cleansing that's going on. And if you keep chanting, gradually the consciousness will become purified. Don't be discouraged. So, yes, chanting in the cleansing stage is very worthwhile. It's like you go into the shower when you had a sweaty day. So you're not dismayed when the dirt starts to fly off of you. That means the shower is doing its job. You don't run out of the shower. Oh my God, look at all that sweat that was coming off. Turn off the shower. You stay in the shower and get clean. No one's going to criticize you. Oh, you're so sweaty in the shower. You're in the shower. So please go on with your chanting. Make it a dedicated daily practice, and you'll see the results. Very nice question. Thank you. Yes.
I've got a question. How do you oppose when you see something wrong, like non-vegetarianism in Australia?
How do you oppose when you see something wrong, such as?
Example, corruption in India or non-vegetarianism in Australia. And you say so many people following non-vegetarianism. So how is such a wrong and they support those things?
How do you respond when you see something wrong?
Yes, and how should you oppose it?
You start a space exploration program and spend all your money on that. I was joking. What is the depth of the problem? What is the root of the problem? You have to understand the root. Otherwise, if you try to stop this, stop that, protest this, protest that, without getting to the root, you'll waste your whole life. The root of the problem is that people are thinking they are the body and the mind. They've forgotten their spiritual identity, and they have forgotten their connection with the supreme spiritual identity. So to really help people, you have to solve the root of the problem. It's like someone falls off this boat into the water and they don't know how to swim. How are you going to help that person? If you know how to swim and you jump in to save the person, you think, and you grab their shirt and climb back up onto the boat. I saved him, I saved him, I saved him. Look, here's the shirt. Meanwhile, the person drowns. This is like material help. The person is not the body or mind, just like the person's not the shirt. So we have to know who is the real person we're trying to help. What is their real problem? So Krishna's instructions in Bhagavad Gita focus on the root of the problem. People have forgotten what is God. If you say love of God, you need deep comprehensive knowledge of God. Then your love is deeper. The more you know about someone, the more you'll love that person. So this is India's greatest gift to the world. Beyond just saying love of God in an official way, what is the deepest, most comprehensive knowledge of the Supreme that we can get? Then our love becomes the deepest for the Supreme. That is the root solution. Without knowledge of Krishna, we are like orphans wandering in this material world with no knowledge that we have the most wealthy Father. So I beg you, please don't be distracted by temporary, superficial solutions. Go for the depth, go for the root. Don't become proud saving the shirt of a drowning person. Understand who the person really is and what are the real needs of the living entity. This is why Bhagavad Gita is most practical. Thank you. Very nice questions. Yes, yes.
You said because of our past karma, it is like we have to suffer for that karma. And simultaneously, if we chant 16 rounds, then most of our sufferings will be resolved. So how can that two things happen simultaneously? You say on one side there will be karma, and on the other side the problems will be resolved. How is that possible?
At the end of Bhagavad Gita, Krishna makes his famous guarantee. Sarvadharmam prityaja mamekam sharanam vraja. Aham tam sarva papebhyo mokshayishami marshcha. Krishna says, you drop your speculations, your concoctions about what you should do, and you take my instructions, you do what I say, and Krishna says, I will protect you from all your karmic reactions. Don't worry. Krishna is the only one who can truly say, no worries, mate. Because as long as you have karmic reactions chasing you, you have a lot to worry about. It's those karmic reactions that are sending the waves of happiness and distress to you. So Krishna is inviting you, get out of the water. You won't be hit anymore by these karmic waves changing all the time. Happiness, distress, distress, happiness, and mixtures. Krishna is offering, you take up his program and you're out of the water. That is the whole bhakti program of engaging your senses in serving Krishna. Whatever abilities you have, business, engineering, IT, use those talents in Krishna's service. Have a Krishna-centered family. So we don't say no family, no job, no university. How can I say no university? We say you can do those things with Krishna in the center. That's the true art of living. There's no such thing as an art of living without connection to Krishna. Way in the back, there's a question.
Everyone said like we pray because we suffer over here. This world is actually a jail. This world is made to make us suffer so that we go back to Krishna. We go back to Krishna because he's gonna take care of us, or we go back to him because we love him. We do, as he said, we do 16 rounds to get rid of our karmic reactions.
I didn't say that you should do it, but...
He asked the question.
Okay.
My question is, should we do the deeds just because we love him? Or it's like, I go to my father back to India because I'm suffering here.
And you want some money.
He will give me a nice house to live in and all that stuff. Or I go to him because I really miss him.
Okay. If you are in need of money, you are in distress, and you go back to your father in India, that's okay. It's not the greatest motivation, though, but it's okay. Similarly, if you approach Krishna, he says this in Bhagavad Gita, Chaturvida bhajante mam jana sukatino Arjuna. Krishna says to Arjuna, 4 kinds of persons approach me, and they all have sukriti, auspicious merit. The distressed, the inquisitive, those who are seeking economic prosperity, and those who are seeking wisdom. These are not the best motives, Krishna explains, but they get you in the door. And from there, you become further purified in that you simply want to love Krishna. So there are different levels. Whatever your motive is, please approach Krishna. Because even if you have material motives, you can't fulfill those material motives yourself. Krishna is the source. It's just that approaching Krishna with material motives is not the most intelligent thing. But better to approach Krishna with material motives than not approach at all. So what happens, by your engaging in spiritual practices, even if you have approached Krishna with material motives, you gradually become purified and realize there's better ways to deal with Krishna. Just like the example you gave in terms of dealing with your biological father. If you have a loving relationship with your father, you realize that there's better motivation than just dealing with your father for material gain. There's a deep, loving relationship possible. But that takes maturity. Okay? So whatever your motivation is, please approach Krishna. Don't think that you have to be completely pure in the beginning. I cannot remember what my motives were in the beginning. Beginning means beginning. You have to begin somewhere. You have to begin your medical treatment somewhere. Yes.
How do we define being spiritual without being religious?
Yes. He's asked, how can we define being spiritual without being religious? A very important question today. Because people are afraid of religion. Because they see that what people consider to be religion has caused a lot of misunderstanding, wars, strife, caste consciousness. If we study Bhagavad Gita, we find that those material deficiencies of so-called religion have nothing to do with real religion. Real religion should be a spiritual science that begins with understanding what your identity is. It's amazing that you can go to so many churches, temples, synagogues, mosques, and you'll never get the lessons that Krishna gives in the beginning of Bhagavad Gita, that you are not the body, you're a pure spiritual entity. Anyone who goes somewhere where there is genuine spiritual science, this is the first thing you'll learn, the first lesson. You are not material. You are not biology or psychology. You are a spiritual entity, part of the supreme spiritual entity. So without that basic knowledge, you just have religious rituals, religious traditions with no solid core. And this is what so many young people object to. Okay, you believe this, that one believes that. What's it done for the world? Because there's no spiritual science. Real religion is scientific in that it stresses what is your identity? What are you a part of? Unless those questions can be deeply answered, you don't have a spiritual science. You have religious sentiment, which is better than nothing. Religious sentiment is better than nothing. Just like a child, a little child may have sentiment for the father, even though the child is not aware of all the father's activities and how the father is sacrificing for the child. The child may simply think, Father gives me gifts, he gives me hugs, that's it. But as the child grows up, the child becomes aware of all the father's activities. So similarly, religious sentiment is a good beginning, better than nothing, better that the child has sentiment for the father, even though no knowledge of what the father does, than nothing. But what Krishna is offering us in Bhagavad Gita goes far beyond religious sentiment. In the beginning of the 9th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, Raja Vidya Raja Guhyam Pavitram Paramam Bhavam. Supreme knowledge, not sentiment. Genuine spiritual science begins with understanding what you are. The human civilization today has an identity crisis. Are you matter or are you something else? A genuine spiritual system has to answer that question deeply. Because if you think you're matter, then why should anything matter? You can spend your whole life chasing material happiness. But if you're not matter, if you're spirit soul, then you understand matter will never satisfy you. Remember, if you think you're just matter, then nothing matters. There's matter out there. There's water, there's air, there's wood, there's steel, and there's you. But if you understand your identity as pure spirit soul, then you understand no material experience can satisfy you. So that's the foundation of spiritual knowledge. Religion, as conventionally known, means belief. I believe this. What do you believe? Some people are tired of that. You believe this way, he believes that way. Just believe whatever you want to believe and get on with your life. Just don't bother me with your belief. So I understand your point. And therefore, if you acquaint yourself with the spiritual science, Bhagavad Gita, you'll be intellectually satisfied. But to speak of spiritually satisfied. So all the religions of the world are pointing in the right direction, but they're different levels of comprehensiveness. If you're going to talk about God, whether you call him Jehovah or Allah, you should be able to give deep knowledge of the science of God. But there are different levels of spiritual knowledge because people are at different levels. When you understand the science of God at its depth, then you're ready for Krishna. Krishna means the all-attractive, the one who attracts everyone and everything. So if you begin your study of the spiritual science of bhakti, pure love and devotion for Krishna, you'll understand all the world's religions. When I was an 8-year-old boy, I was going to Lutheran school at the time. For those who don't know, Lutheran is a type of Christianity, one of the Christian branches. So, the Lutheran Church in the USA, they told my mother, if your boy will promise to be a Lutheran priest, we'll give him a university scholarship. My mother was thinking, oh, he's 8 years old, he's a bit too young for that decision. Then, when I was 12 years old, I was giving sermons in the Presbyterian Church, another branch of Christianity. Then when I was 15, I became an agnostic. I don't know if God exists or not. You see what happened when I was 13? I received a scholarship to boarding school in the mountains of New Hampshire. 175 students in the whole school, 4 students per class. The goal of the school was to put as many students as possible into the Ivy League schools. Classes 6 days a week, 4 students in a class. So my mother had arranged I get that scholarship. So I remember, as a 13-year-old, riding my bicycle in the beautiful mountains and thinking, just look, the beautiful mountains in the autumn season, the leaves are turning. Yes, this shows there is God. Then after a few years of intense education, one priest came to the school when I was 16, and he gave a lecture. Students, my boys, just look at the beauty of nature. Look at the mountains. Look at the sky. Surely that shows your God. Surely that shows there is God. Excuse me. So I turned to my friends and I said, just hear this nonsense. How unscientific. But somehow or other, I became inspired to believe that there's such a thing as the love supreme. And I didn't know what it was, but I never forgot that. When I started reading Bhagavad Gita when I was in my early 20s, then I discovered the love supreme. So I understand what you're saying about religious sentiment and religious belief. It is not substantial. People call themselves Christians, Muslims, Hindus, and they fight one another based on these ethnic external identifications. They don't know what is the real core of their teachings. They simply stamp themselves with this religion, that religion, but they don't know what is the core. So what we need is a universal education throughout the world in what is spiritual science, beginning with what is the self and what is the supreme self. That will solve all this religious strife problem, all this belief battle. So you all, in closing, you all have the greatest opportunity to make the greatest contribution to the world. You can give the greatest treasure from India and show in your lifestyle how that greatest treasure applies. And then you'll see a change in the world. India's gift to the world is not IT, believe it or not. It is transcendental knowledge, knowledge beyond happiness and distress, past, present, and future. The knowledge that Krishna gives. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.